That right there is one of the best things I've eaten in my life. Fragrant, peppery pork filling with a flaky, almost charred crust. These are hujiaobing, or black pepper pork buns, and the most famous ones come from Roahe Night market. There's a big stall with these massive clay ovens that they stick the buns to the walls of, and they bake in like 60 seconds. They're incredible, one of my favorite things we had while we were traveling. Now, I don't have one of those massive clay ovens to bake these in like 60 seconds, but I figured out a technique to get them just as good at home, and I'm gonna teach you that today. To start, we need to make our dough, and there is a pretty sick technique for getting flaky buns pretty easily. It's a nice way to almost cheat the system. The trick is straightforward. Just have two doughs laminated together. One is a standard yeasted dough, and the other is essentially a fat paste that goes between the layers. If you've ever made croissants, the concept is pretty much the same, just simpler in execution, a lot simpler. The result is this incredibly flaky, almost shatteringly crisp exterior that you never get from a regular bun. For the yeasted dough, combine 300 grams of all-purpose flour with 3 grams of active dry yeast, 25 grams of sugar, and 6 grams of salt. We're just gonna make sure that the yeast is well distributed into the flour before we do anything else. Then knead in 175 grams of warm water until you have a smooth, cohesive dough. I just use a wooden spoon here until I can't anymore, then I switch to my hands and just go to town on it. It needs a little bit of kneading, it needs a little bit of work, but it's gonna be worth it. Cover it and let it rest for at least an hour. We need it to double in size before we can really work with it, so let's just hang out and work on the laminated dough and the filling. The laminated dough is very straightforward. For this one, I just mix 70 grams of cake or pastry flour, just something with not a lot of gluten in it, with 50 grams of lard. I've been using bacon fat, that's delicious. You could use pork fat, you could use beef tallow, just something that's got good flavor, and it's gonna puff up to create those nice flaky layers. Start mixing it with a spoon and then just finish it with your hands. When there aren't any more dry pockets of flour, it's done. Go ahead and set that in the fridge for now. Before I start working on my pork and get my board all dirty, I'll go ahead and just slice a bunch of scallion greens and a little bit of the white. This is just one full bunch of scallions that I bought from the store, washed and sliced not very thin at all. You want big pieces because they stay crunchy and they retain a lot more moisture in the bun. If we want the most fragrant hujiaobing, which we do, the filling needs to be just right. Start with the pork, and I'm using belly, which has the right balance of lean meat to fat. This is a really, really fatty pork belly, but it still turned out delicious. Normally there's a little bit more meat on these pieces. If you have too lean of meat, you end up with something pretty dry and crumbly no matter how well you season it. It starts to taste kind of like a dry meatball. The move is to cut the belly pieces in half, or if they're really wide, in thirds, and then slice them down into little chunks. Not quite ground pork, but not quite huge pieces. Season your pork belly with 1 teaspoon of salt, a half teaspoon of white pepper, a half teaspoon of 5-spice, a half teaspoon of sugar, a 1/4 teaspoon of MSG, a half teaspoon of ground ginger, 1 tablespoon of light soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of dark soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of cooking wine, Shaoxing cooking wine is great, 1 teaspoon of sesame oil. The last thing you need is a crap ton of black pepper. I do like 20 turns on my pepper mill, probably like almost a full tablespoon or so. Just go until you can see flecks of pepper covering all of the pork. For mixing, we're looking for the meat to become shiny and for the whole mixture to look really nice and uniform. We added quite a bit of liquid in with the seasoning, and the meat needs a little bit of time to absorb it, so just keep mixing it until it does. Honestly, this is one of the recipes that took the most amount of seasoning adjustments for me because the ones in Roahe were so distinct. And this seasoning mix, in my opinion, is pretty spot on. We can just set this pork mix in the fridge while we work on shaping. The yeasted dough should be doubled in size about now, so we're gonna portion it into 8 equal balls. I'll cover those and let them chill for like 10 minutes. One of the things you're gonna see with each step of the way that I do is if I work with the dough, I let it rest for like 5 to 10 minutes. It lets the dough relax a little bit because we're gonna be sort of semi-laminating this. It needs a chance to sort of chill out and relax before you can work with it again. The minute the dough starts getting stiff, it gets really difficult to work with, and then you have to press more, and then you end up squeezing the lard out of the dough. At this point, it's a good idea to take your fat dough out of the fridge and divide it into 8 even pieces as well. Just make little balls with those, and those can rest in the fridge until you need them. Okay, so these have rested. Take a ball, flatten it with your palm or use a rolling pin, and then place one of your laminating dough balls right in the center of it. You're gonna wrap the yeasted dough around it, pinch it close, and place it seam side down. Once you're through all of those, cover them, let them rest for another like 5 to 10 minutes. Getting the iconic clay oven char at home is a bit tricky, but I've got 2 options for you. The thing that I found is that a pizza stone is best. It's what I use now, and it's really incredible. But you can also use a cast iron if you don't have it. If all else fails, you don't have a pizza stone, you don't have a cast iron, you could bake these on a sheet tray, but that's kind of only if everything else is unavailable. Put your stone or a large cast iron pan in the middle of your oven and crank the heat to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Let it preheat in there the whole time while you're filling the buns so it's ripping hot by the time they go in. The buns landing on that hot pan is what give them a really deep charred flavor. It makes them taste very, very similar to the real thing you get out of the clay oven. Now back to shaping. I like to grab one of those rested balls and just roll it north to south, forward and backwards only. Then I pull it from the top and roll it on itself like a little cinnamon roll. Flatten it again, roll it north to south one more time, and then roll it on itself again like a little cinnamon roll. What we've done is create dozens of layers of dough in fat without much effort at all. If you've seen croissants being made, you know that process is really, really intense. This is legitimately so much easier. This is where all that flakiness comes from. Get through all of those, and same thing as before, just let them rest a bit so they're easier to flatten. Once it's rested, we'll fold the two edges back towards the center to form a round ball shape, and we're gonna put it smooth side up. Using a rolling pin, get these out to a little bit less than 1/4 inch thick. You want these flat, but not crazy thin. This isn't like making a tortilla or anything. We need a little bit of texture so they preserve a lot of that puffiness. If you get them too thin, they risk tearing and then fat starts to spill out of them. When I roll it, I like to make sure the smooth side is up. So when I grab it off the board to actually fill it, I flip it over. So the smooth side is gonna be facing the outside. That pretty side is gonna get nice and brown in the oven. Like I said, when you go to fill, the smooth side is facing out, and then add a generous spoonful of pork filling to the center. I find that with these buns, you can get close to overfilling them and still have enough leeway with the dough to actually seal them. So I put a lot of pork in these, and then I just place the whole thing face down in a tray of scallions. That way the scallions stick to the pork, and then I've got as much scallion as I possibly can fit onto these buns. I find the closing and sealing process to be pretty difficult, and so I kind of just like use one hand to hold it, use my thumb to press it down, and the other hand is kind of pinching the dough closed, working around the edge until it's like semi-sealed. At that point, I hold it in one hand, use the other hand to sort of pull up the edges until it's almost covering those green onion pieces, and then I just try to seal it using my fingertips. It's a little bit challenging, it takes a little bit of effort, but the nice thing is, as long as you're not tearing your dough, they're gonna be fine and they're gonna seal. Before I start filling and sealing them, I like to mix a little bit of honey with water to thin it out, and I also like to have a tray or a plate with toasted sesame seeds and black sesame seeds, just kind of mixed together for a nice little topping at the end. You can just use regular sesame, I just think the black ones look really, really pretty. Once all of the 8 buns are filled and sealed, brush on a little bit of that honey water and then dunk the brush side straight into the bowl of toasted sesame seeds. I tested this both ways, and it works a lot better in my opinion if you brush the seam side and dunk that in the sesame seeds. You're then gonna press that seeded side into the pizza stone or pan. I find I really like having the unseeded side facing up so it gets nice and smooth and domed and pretty. And I really like the crusty, crunchy, pressed side to be where the sesame seeds are. Get them in the oven and let them bake. Something like 18 to 22 minutes is perfect. Depending on how long your oven has been preheating, this can take 18 minutes, and if it's a little bit less hot, it can take like 22 minutes or so. Just keep an eye on them getting nice and brown. When they're ready to go, I use a spatula to scrape them off the pizza pan, and you'll see that edge that was sort of attached to the pan itself is just beautiful and crispy. You have to wait a pretty good amount of time for these to cool off. There's so much liquid and steam in the bun itself that you really can burn yourself pretty immediately. I did that when we were in Taiwan. You want to eat it like right away from the clay oven, and you just burn the crap out of your mouth. Once you were able to pull one open though, you'll notice tons of steam, and the black pepper and 5 spice hit you like right away. The scallion is nice and sweet and fragrant. The pork is just so juicy in a way that a fully lean filling wouldn't ever be. It needs that fat from the pork belly to be really nice and delicious. Now, I ate these black pepper pork buns at about 7 p.m. in a Taiwanese night market, and eating these here now just takes me right back to that place. And that's sort of what this channel is all about. It's cooking food that I love that's gonna transport me to different places all over the world. These are like one of my favorite recipes I've ever made. They're like so freaking close to perfect. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and like it and subscribe to my channel if you want more content like this. Now, a massive shout out to the amazing people supporting me directly on Patreon through patreon.com/CameronMarty. They get some cool benefits, and I get to keep making videos, so it's a win-win. Consider checking it out and consider becoming a patron. If you're wanting another recipe to go along with these pork buns and you're okay with carbs on carbs on carbs, go ahead and check out my Taiwanese braised beef noodle soup recipe right here. Thanks again. Cheers.